The State Department has ordered non-emergency embassy staff to leave Iraq. Why? Well, of course. It's because a travel advisory warned numerous terrorist and insurgent groups are active in Iraq, regularly attacking both Iraqi security forces and civilians. Anti-U.S. sectarian militias may also threaten U.S. Citizens and Western companies throughout Iraq. It is an attempt to make it seem and to build this narrative that somehow Iran is attacking America. Tried to do it with this story of the boats. Unfortunately, they forgot to damage the Saudi boats that were supposedly attacked by Iran or Iranian proxies. You've got to. If you're going to try and start a war, you've got to look back into history and realize you need to sink these boats. You need to do some damage on it if you're going to do it. U.S. lawmakers are upset because they are in the dark in terms of what's going on in Iran. I think I don't know, we may update that Treat of Parsi that I did for Ring of Fire that we're going to play maybe on Memorial Day. I think it's going to be consistent. Michael had an updated talk with him the other night. But the bottom line is the understanding, at least from people on the outside, is that Bolton and Pompeo and the neocons want a war with Iran. Donald Trump, of course, has no sense of whether he wants a war or not. He just wants to have a win. If he can make a new deal with them, I guess, that could be exactly the same as the old deal, but he gets the credit for it. He would be happy with that. He thinks that's what Pompeo and Bolton are doing. They are telling him we are trying to be tough, bring him to the negotiation table. When, of course, Michael and I were talking about this before. It's easy to say you could do that with North Korea because they have to the extent that they have internal politics, it is much more like Game of Thrones stuff where they don't worry about the populace. But in Iran, they actually have like broad swaths of politics that involve domestic opinion and whatnot. So leaders are constrained there by that. And there are different competing factions as to what should happen in regards to the United States. What will protect them as much? It's not just a dude drinking Cristal who likes to have Trump there, and I'm going to talk him up. Although that didn't work for Trump. And so what we have is basically a rudderless administration with some factions in the administration paddling in one direction, hoping that they'll get caught into a current and the current will do the rest of the work. And that is a spiral into war. And that's where we're at. Supposedly, U.S. lawmakers are in the dark. That's what members of Congress are saying. But Lindsey Graham says, I think all of us are in the dark over here. Well, Tom Cotton seems to be able to see in the dark. Here he is on firing line. Was this Margaret Hoover? Is that her name?
Could we win a war with Iran?
Yes.
That didn't take you a second.
2 strikes, the first strike and the last strike.
What are the conditions or the circumstances that would justify going to war with Iran?
Pause it. That sounds really glib, and it's supposed to project that he knows what he's talking about. But we just went through 2 wars that lasted about 18 years. We still basically have people there. It just depends on how you want to define a war. So it's also conceivable to not have that last strike. In fact, I think we've had that last strike multiple times in both those countries, those pronouncements. But it sounds really glib to say, yes, we can win any war we want to. I think history has shown that that's not the case. But Tom Cotton understands that if I say it confidently enough, it'll make it sound like it actually is something that means something.
This is
going to war with Iran.
Well, if Iran struck out militarily against the United States or against our allies in the region, then I would certainly expect a devastating response against Iran.
As somebody who fought in two fronts in the Middle East, both in Iraq and in Afghanistan, do you think it would be a good idea to go to war with Iran?
No, I don't advocate military action against Iran. I'm simply delivering the message that if Iran were to attack the United States, it would be a grave miscalculation on their part, and there would be a furious response. Now, we don't want to govern Iran. We don't want to rule 80 million Iranians. We want 80 million Iranians to be able to govern themselves.
Where are you on regime change?
What I want is to have an outlaw regime change its behavior, to rejoin the civilized world and stop supporting terrorism and trying to overthrow the governments of so many of its neighbors. Ultimately, it's up to the Iranian people and their leaders to decide how they're going to govern their country. But with men like those in charge of Iran, I think we're going to see what we've seen for the last 40 years, which is a revolutionary theological movement that's hijacked the powers of a nation state.
I wonder if that means on any level to you that war is inevitable.
War is never inevitable. War is always the product of human choices.
Yeah, like for instance, if you break a deal, that is the first step in achieving what he wants to achieve. And it's a huge first step, massive first step. I mean, this is dangerous because they really are basically just setting up. We're just going to keep putting ourselves close enough, threatening enough to the regime so that if something goes awry and it can be perceived as an attack on us, well, then we would have to have devastating responses. I mean, it's really problematic. I would imagine they are setting up an attack by a proxy, as it were, but we will continue to watch this.
Proxy.
It's
Tom
scary.
Cotton was a prime, also, somebody who tried to destroy the initial deal with poison pills. And what's amazing is that all of these ancillary issues, which at some of them you have to figure out, some of them the United States just has to stop trying to demand, other countries submit to its will on every single thing. But the whole precision of how this deal worked was that it didn't include all these ancillary issues and was a success as a result of it. And everybody needs to be reminded that there is absolutely no institution on earth, including even the Trump administration, that denies that Iran wasn't living up to its obligations.
That's right. What happened was there was a very specific call to bipartisan to deal specifically with the Iran's nuclear program. And the Obama administration pursued that exclusive agenda. Not whether Iran was funding Hamas, not whether they were providing food for, factions in Yemen, not whether they were supportive of Hezbollah, not whether they were involved in Iraq. None of it. It was specifically the development of nuclear weapons. Step one, massive step. Massive step. They took it. They were successful. They were there. We had it. No one contends that this was broken. And as soon as that deal was signed, every single Republican was like, it doesn't include stuff that we specifically didn't want included in the first place. And now we have a way of attacking it. It really is stunning, and it's super scary.